I'm Suzanne Morris, I'm MD of Fishburn Hedges, and I'd like to welcome you all to the latest in our series of What Next events, where we debate business issues of the day. And I'm delighted to say that we've assembled a really excellent panel for this evening's debate, which is all about what next for the High Street. And we wanted to hold this event because, like you, we are absolutely fascinated by the sheer scale and pace of change that's happening on the High Street. And the challenges and the opportunities that this creates for all of our clients and others across the sector. Retailers are clearly facing what is a very deep and seemingly very enduring downturn, fueled by the perfect storm of high inflation, wage stagnation and unemployment, which is really hitting consumers hard in the pocket. Now, the sector's obviously faced bleak economic conditions in the past, but what we think is really fascinating about what's happening right now is the extent to which technology and the social media revolution is really changing the way that consumers shop, the way they interact with retailers, with brands, and the way that they choose to spend what scant resources they might have. We're fortunate to have a really expert panel here tonight to lead us in what will no doubt be a fantastic discussion. To introduce each of them in turn, to my far right we have Andrea Felsted, who is the Financial Times Senior Retail Correspondent. She's been writing since about 2010 on the big UK retailers, but also some of the main retail trends that are happening both in the UK and overseas. She's a graduate of Cambridge University, and she worked for Lloyd's List in the insurance sector before joining the Financial Times over a decade ago. So welcome, Andrea. Gwyn Burr, next to me, is Customer Service and Colleague Director for Sainsbury's. Gwyn sits on the operating board at Sainsbury's with responsibility for marketing, communications, customer service, corporate responsibility and human resources. Hope I've not left anything out there. She previously worked at Nestlé and also spent 13 years with Asda Walmart. She's currently also non-executive director for Sainsbury's Bank plc and the Financial Ombudsman Service. And she's currently chair of the Community Investment Leadership Team at Business in the Community. Welcome, Gwyn. To my left, Ladha is 3 months into his role as Deputy MD of Oasis, which is a much-loved brand which has been on our high streets for the last 20 years, and currently now has around 500 stores across the UK and overseas. He was previously Group Multi-Channel Director at parent company of Oasis, Aurora Fashions, where he's been responsible for some real kind of market-leading first for fashion retail, including 90-minute deliveries and Aurora's omni-channel strategy. He's formerly Marketing and Operations Director at ASOS, and his career also spans roles at Topman, BHS and New Look, where he became a director at the tender age of 28.
Just last year.
Yeah, I was going to say. And finally, welcome to Simon Russell, who is head of multi-channel at John Lewis, a brand he joined as a graduate trainee. He has spent much of his career at John Lewis working in-store, including a role as managing director of my second home, John Lewis Bluewater. Over the last 2 years, he's been responsible for integrating the brand's rapidly growing online and mobile strategy with the core retail estate, leading a £1 billion online programme and customer delivery proposition. And shortly he'll be taking up a new role as Director for Operational Development, including, among other things, developing the Shop of the Future, which we're excited to hear about. So we're going to ask each of our panel to spend a few minutes setting out their perspectives on the issue, and then we were going to open the discussion up to the floor. If you would like to ask a question, please just raise your hand. We've got roving mics that will come and find you, and if you could, for the benefit of the panel, just say your name and organisation, that would be really, really helpful. If you could ensure your phones are switched off or on silent, and if you would like to follow our discussion on Twitter, please do so using the hashtag behind me, at FHRetail, and if indeed you'd like to submit a question that way, we'll happily take them, and one of my colleagues will be going through those during the course of the evening. So now I'd like to turn to the first of our panel and hear from her, and so I'm going to hand over to Andrea Felsted. Andrea.
Thank you. As Susan said, we all know there's an unprecedented amount of change going on in high street and in retail. We know about technology, about, that doesn't sound very good, about the change in the high street, the number of shops being closed as retailers realise they can serve the population with far fewer stores than they had to have in the past. The changing population, the ageing population, all those sort of trends. But I think there's one element that hasn't really been picked up on yet that I think is going to have as much impact as all of those things that are going on at the moment. And that's the sort of cooling down of the supermarket growth. Now, supermarket growth has been a massive thing for many years, and it's really stepped up over the last couple of years. In a 4-year period, the big 4 supermarkets had planned to open about 19 million square foot of new stores, and that's about the size of Sainsbury's today. So I think from about 2010 to 2014, you had another Sainsbury's being put down in the UK. So that was all going ahead, and then after Christmas we had a profit warning from Tesco, the first in 20 years, and they broke ranks. They blinked first and they said, we're going to probably open less space. And where we're going to open less space is in the big out-of-town hypermarkets. And this is interesting because it really brings together a lot of trends that are happening. The migration online, particularly for non-food, for the commodity non-food items like clothing, electricals, those standard things that you would go to the supermarket for. A lot of people are now buying those online. Plus we've had a very high price of petrol over the last year, and people have been put off from driving long distances to go into an out-of-town store. They'll think twice, do I want to drive to a store? And obviously we've been in a consumer downturn. The early 90s recession might have been an interest rate led downturn, but this downturn has been a consumer petrol driven downturn, and people have had to budget, and they've had to change the way they're spending on a weekly basis. A lot more people are sticking to strict budgets. As just said, 1 in 4 people had got to the checkout and they'd had to put something back because it had gone over their budget. And people are thinking, I don't want to go to a store that might have nice homewares or it might have nice clothing, because you know what, I don't want to put that top in my basket. I don't want to put that cushion in my basket or that scented candle because I can't afford it. So they're really trying to avoid temptation. Then we've got the trend of people shopping locally. Now, Justin King, Chief Executive of Sainsbury's, has talked about this trend of people shopping more frequently and locally. And when they're doing a big shop, at the weekend, they're putting one less thing in the basket. And when they go to a convenience store on the way home from work, they're buying that thing then instead, because that helps to cut down on food waste, and again, it helps to control the budget. So you've got all these things coming together in this trend. And you've also got a bit about the changing population, because the population is ageing. I used to write about insurance, and I wrote constantly about how people were getting older and what that was going to do to insurers' balance sheets. But it also affects retailers. In developing markets, the big hypermarkets are still popular, but in developed markets they're not. And part of that reason is because you've got more older single person households. You don't want to drive to a big store. You want to maybe drive a short distance or go to a smaller store to top up. And I think also that plays into why the discounters have been doing so well. That we've seen double-digit growth from the Aldi's, Lidl's, and I think one of the reasons that hasn't been touched on is because they are smaller stores. They are easier to navigate. It's not just price. So what does this mean for the future? We think Tesco is going to cut back on its store expansion plan. I wouldn't be surprised if Sainsbury said that it was doing something similar, although I don't know that. That would be my bet. And Morrison's, we think they might curb their store opening a little bit on Thursday when having their results. But again, we don't know. Asda's already said it's opening fewer big stores. But the flip side of this, the converse, is that this means people are going to concentrate on more neighbourhood stores, more convenience stores, and I think that's good for the high street. It could bring footfall back into the high street. Now, Mary Porter's has talked about curbing these big out-of-town developments, final approval from Eric Pickles before any are built, and in a way, I think she's closed the stable door after the horse is bolted. I think that's the right expression, because we might not have so many of these things being built in the future. But where I think it is interesting what she's talked about is this talking about the change of use restrictions in high streets, because supermarkets say that's a big problem. We actually want to convert these units into supermarkets, but we can't because of changing use. And there are some other regulations. Now, forgive me if I have to look this up, I don't get it wrong. These 106 agreements, which mean that if you develop a property into a shop, you have to, make some contribution. It might be a new road or something like that. And in a town, if you're building on the high street, you've got lots more things around you. And retail estate's actually more difficult to develop in towns, partly because of these things. So I think this all bodes quite well for the high street, the idea of people coming back into town, less space going down out of town. But there are still key areas, such as the planning, such as these 106 agreements, that could be tackled if the high street goes into the future. Thank you.
Andrea, thank you very much. I think the fact that Poundland announced earlier this week that it's starting to accept Amex articulates some of the consumer issues that you raised there. So now I'd like to turn to Gwyn Burr, who I'm sure has some interesting perspectives on a lot of what Andrea talked about, but is also going to talk to us about the way that brands are engaging with consumers and this challenge around kind of a lot of disenfranchisement amongst consumers and what retailers can do to address that. Gwyn?
Yeah, I might answer. Yeah, I think it's. I won't comment directly on Andrea's piece at this stage, although I'm sure it'll come up in debate. But the piece that I was asked to bring to the debate was where are customers on big brands, on particularly supermarkets and for me specifically Sainsbury's, and we hear a lot about customers being very disenfranchised, and yet we know from the performance overall of the supermarket sector that, and I'm sure it's probably the case for every single person in this room, we choose to go to supermarkets every single week, and we either go to large supermarkets or local or locals. And yes, there will be one or two people shaking their head in the room saying, I never go to a supermarket, which is true, but I think we would all accept that's not particularly the norm in the UK. So what is the reason for that? Well, I think it's because our job as a supermarket at Sainsbury's is to make sure that we are always putting our customers centre stage in our business. And I think there are examples where that doesn't necessarily happen, and people will travel a journey with you for a period of time if you haven't put customers at the heart of your business, but will eventually fall away. And there are many ways, I think, that we have to hold ourselves to account on whether or not we do a good job on that. Ultimately, we have to say, are we still a growing business and we're still attracting new customers? And I think that is an extremely important measure. In sort of 2008, Sainsbury's was going great guns, I think it's fair to say, in the tail end of what we set out to be Making Sainsbury's Great Again, which was our turnaround programme. And a lot was going well, and the business had sort of recovered itself, and we launched the brand. We tried something new today, and we were in I think a very strong place. And then recession hit. And I think we had, as a leadership team, a real sort of pulling ourselves up by our roots to decide how do we respond to this scenario. And others around us tried to reinvent themselves. I mean, I think we all remember Tesco's, Britain's biggest discounter, Sort of briefly flirted with the idea of could you actually sort of tear up history and become something totally different. We didn't feel, because as 100, and I guess at that point we were 139 years old, that was something we could credibly do with our customer base. We felt it was very important to reconnect with customers about why did they want to come and shop at Sainsbury's, and what could we do to walk the journey with them. An unknown journey, it has to be said, and to an extent it is still an unknown journey, through a recession the likes of which none of us have lived through before. And I guess for us the light bulb moment when we actually went out and listened to customers was that everybody had this kind of connection with the fact that their parents used to shop at Sainsbury's and their grandparents used to shop at Sainsbury's, and a huge part of that route was in our own label. And actually, when we kind of really refocused our attention on our own brand, we realised that it gave us a chance to recession-proof our customers' baskets, because you could buy Sainsbury's own brand for exactly the same, if not better quality product, but save 20% on your shopping basket. So we went out very strongly with this whole idea of switch and save. So you could ring fence the quality of your shopping and particularly how you were feeding your family without having to change the way you're choosing to shop. And we did see differences, particularly in protein. So people that had maybe been buying steak started buying mince and started buying chicken. And we saw customers being really very logical in how they organised themselves. And we introduced at that time Cook and Save, Shop and Save, Switch and Save. Very simple, well articulated and very strongly supported above the line pieces of activity that said to our customers, we understand what you're going through and therefore you can afford to stick with us regardless of your budget. Our very clear differentiation within ranging of good, better, best tiering between Taste the Difference, now by Sainsbury's, we've rebranded it during the course of that time, and Basics means that regardless of your budget, you could still shop with Sainsbury's. So I think what we had to do, and what all big businesses have to do actually, is to show that they connect with their customer and that they are prepared to walk the customer journey. Andrea touched on the whole issue of waste, and I think it's really important, and we launched Love Your Leftovers during that time and continued to push on it, which is not actually, bizarrely, asking customers to buy more, it's helping them to use what they bought in a more effective way. So you're having your chicken for Sunday dinner, but on Monday night's tea you can do a chicken soup or a bottle, whatever it may be. And actually, we've got ourselves, I think, in a good place insofar as we believe that the food waste for Sainsbury's shoppers will be 20% less this year than last. And it is those tangible things that I think we need to keep delivering to our customer base. One of the other things that our research tells us, again a point that Andrea touched on, in terms of people being enticed to shop, so I don't want to put that scented candle in, is that actually 70% of our customers make a list before they come to shop with us. And we've seen a huge increase in that. So people are being really planned. And again, that's where having a breadth of offer within a supermarket is really helpful. So I think it's something like 40 to 50% of our customers buy in the same basket on the same shopping trip, something from our Taste the Difference range and something from our Basics range. So we know we've got savvy shoppers. We know we've got people that are really thinking about how they make their budgets go further. And we think it's our role to make sure we make that as simple as we possibly can for them. Coming bang up to date then with our latest brand proposition of Live Well for Less. Again, I think anything that we do now needs to be really clearly evidenced for our customers. We can't take anything for granted. And therefore, you have to back things up in a very tangible way. That's why we're very proud of the work we've done so far on Brand Match, giving customers real assurance that they don't need to shop around to Tesco's or Asda on branded baskets, because we will match the price in real time at the till. It's why we continue to strongly promote and work with Nectar, because it means that we can, at Coupon at Till, give customers deals and promotions of things they actually want to buy, instead of all those annoying coupons you get for things you're never going to buy. If you haven't got a baby, you don't want nappies. So let's make sure we know a bit about you, we can market to you in an effective way. It is about, I think, Live Well for Less. It is still about, regardless of where we are in our recession, ethical sourcing, and what we do on fair trade and the relationships with our suppliers, I think, are hugely important. I also think, touching on the specific of the high street, you know, we do know that when a Sainsbury's comes to town, it does create activity on the high street. It can create jobs, particularly convenience stores on the high street. To specifically address Andrea's point around space, Sainsbury's don't have any hypermarkets. Asda and Tesco hypermarkets, no hypermarkets for Sainsbury's. We are a food-first retailer. We have expanded our space into non-food, into clothing and GM, but we don't have any stores of that size, and that's because, you know, we think that it's very important that the shopping experience when you're in our store is an enjoyable quality shopping experience rooted in food, and we continue very strongly with that view. In terms of how much space we'll lay down, we've always communicated to Andrea, we will always stay fluid and flexible in the space that we lay down. You know, we never have this draconian plan, thou shalt deliver. Nectar data helps us with that. It shows us where, you know, we can effectively put stores down. We are in a slightly different position to some of our competitors insofar as we have a large market share in the southeast because it's our heartland. So we are tending to push out into the northern part of the UK, as opposed to squeezing more footage out of an already very crowded area. I think multi-channel should be touched on when we're thinking about supermarket retail generally. I know a lot of you are online retailers here today. I think it's hugely important that we connect with customers in every way they want to connect with us, that we understand their busy lives, that we understand that being able to order something and have it delivered to home at your own convenience is just going to be a way of the future, as is communicating through social media and all the other communication channels that we have. The final point I would say is that one of the things we're hugely proud of is being accredited as gold investors in people. We are only a collective of 150,000 people that work for us, and therefore how we engage our colleagues and our brand and how we enthuse them to serve our customers well, I think remains at the very heart of what we believe differentiates Sainsbury's.
Gwyn, thank you. Fascinating insight into Sainsbury's strategy over the last few years, and you touched on multi-channel towards the end there, and I'd like to turn to two experts in that subject area, starting with Ladha of Oasis.
I'm not very good at making predictions. I've only made two predictions in my career. The first one was that supermarkets wouldn't be able to sell clothing, and I was wrong. And the second one was no one could ever sell fashion online, and I was wrong. So let's not touch on the future for a second. Let's stick with it here and now. I think the observation, first of all, I'd say on the recession, and I won't go into the stats that everybody's been into already, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in a moment, but I love a good old recession. And the reason for that is because it really sharpens the minds of business leaders. And during the boom, it's really easy to become quite lazy in how you serve your customers, because you're pretty much opening up the door. There's lots of cash in the economy. They're coming in, they're spending for spending's sake. When you're actually fighting for share of wallet, the focus of a business changes pretty dramatically, not just around cost, but about winning the hearts and minds of customers. So I think it makes it a really competitive, exciting landscape. And if you can carry on that culture post-recession, it then makes a very successful business. So when it comes to connecting with customers, I do think it's about winning the hearts and minds. And on the online piece, in terms of whether people shop online, and I know a couple of people said, or nodded when you said that not many people are shopping online in terms of groceries. Big market, and of course everyone still likes to go to a supermarket. But it actually can work the other way. So I was an avid online shopper for my groceries because it's really easy. But actually, what really annoyed me was, pretty much everything had to be used within 24 hours for recipes which don't really go together. And what was quite good about Ocado was all the bags were colour-coded, and I fall for small gimmicks quite easily, so I thought that would be quite good. So I did that for a long while. And then my little friends, colleagues at Waitrose launched a scanning experience in store, which was better than the queue up, scan, put it in a bag, because it was scan and put it in a bag. And actually, the enjoyment, and you should try it if you haven't done it, the enjoyment of walking around Waitrose on a Saturday morning, even though it takes longer, scanning that product and putting it in the bag, And then the really smug look you can give all the people who are queuing to go along a conveyor belt is actually fairly dramatic as a customer experience. And what Waitrose did there was take an online philosophy, applied it to an offline shopping experience. And I think it is all around these blurring boundaries between these channels, because technology is not just about an online experience. Technology underpins offline experiences. And actually, brand is not just for a store experience. You can have a really great brand experience online, and ASOS clearly is an example of what we did in terms of building a brand online, as is Amazon. So I think the next few years for the high street becomes more and more exciting, because you've got pure play retailers who, in the main, are not embracing the offline strategy. So to be fair, they become a single channel retailer. And I think that is a big challenge to the pure play businesses out there. And that is the Amazons and the eBays and the ASOSes. You have got Amazon trying to get collection points in shopping centres, etc. And whilst that feels counterintuitive to start with, it will become the norm. And then you've got what are the traditional retailers who have now got very big online businesses and giving those pure play businesses a run for their money. Another rather bizarre story, but when I was growing up, there was a little product which you used to be able to get in supermarket called Bacos. It's not the most stylish product in the world, but it was just a soya-based bacon flavour thing you put over your salad. And I have searched high and low in all the Sainsbury's, right across the country. Every time I do store visits for the brands at Aurora, now at Oasis, no one has them. In fact, when I speak to the 17-year-old on customer services, they've not even heard of it. So I go through you used to get it in Pizza Hut, and basically they don't know who that is, they're all Pizza Express boys, etc. So what has then happened, I then go online, I don't know why I haven't thought of it, given I've been working multi-channel quite a while now, is I searched Bacos, and Amazon delivered them to me within 24 hours. Now, that's the shape of where we're going, and actually you can find any product at any time. And some of the stuff that we've been doing from an Oasis point of view is about blurring those experiences. So to be able to shop online and get something delivered within 90 minutes, but is actually dispatched from a store. And one of our customers, I think our best record, was a 14 minutes delivery. Admittedly, the lady wasn't very far, but able in the city of London to be able to pick from the store and actually get it to the customer in 14 minutes. And if you tweet anything about that, it's Oasis World Record is the hashtag. So basically, that is a classic example of how you can blur those boundaries. In our Argyle Street store, we've been working really hard to use technology in a seamless way to enhance the customer experience. So replacing tills with iPads, not from a gimmick point of view, but so actually the store teams are equipped with all the stuff that they need, whether it's internal comms, whether it's the web and they want to look at something and show their customer, whether they want to actually look at a magazine online with the customer, take a picture of the customer, share it on Facebook, but also to be able to complete the transaction and not have to then take them to another till point. I know I'm not meant to do too many plugs, but next Thursday we're also opening in Westfield, in Stratford, and I suggest you go along. And basically, we are introducing a new concept there of a vertical cash desk. So in our columns will be housed what would normally be in a traditional horizontal cash desk. And that is all taking the Apple philosophy of how do you actually stay with the customer right the way through their journey. So technology is not just for online, it is for offline too. When it comes to customers, we are in a situation, recession given, and let's all roll up our sleeves and work really hard to satisfy them. But we are in a situation where you've got a disparate generation of customers. So you've got older customers who are very web savvy, but actually use it for research. You've got younger customers who are nothing but connected all of the time. They can be your advocate, they can be your detractor, they can actually be your best friend, they can research your product. In the white goods sector, they can actually do a price comparison. So there's lots going on in terms of that young generation. And then there's a slot in the middle. confused generation who become very traditional in some ways, which is, no, I won't tweet about that, that's really rude. Where actually somebody younger would do it intuitively. But actually we're also embracing it. So we are the muddled generation in between, can't make up our mind whether technology is good for us or is actually inhibiting our lifestyle. So, I will send a letter. And it's kind of like, what's the point? Because, people don't check their mailboxes as frequently as they check their email. If you want to get your point across, you're going to send an email. And actually people will say, I won't tweet because I can't be succinct in 140 characters. Well, learn to be, because actually that's the way of the world going forward. And, I can't share on Facebook because that's my personal life. You don't have a personal life anymore, because we are all celebrities who have an online personality, which we need to curate, manage and own. And actually that has a value to a retailer. So on a social strategy, all the work that Facebook are doing in terms of owning your timeline, can I do a little bit of audience participation? Who has a timeline on Facebook? Okay. So timeline is amazing because from the moment you're born to the moment you die, there is actually a digital record of your life, and Facebook are owning that. Part of me was thinking of setting up a business, which is how you manage post-life profiles, so that you can actually shut down for people, and as long as you have their username and password in a sort of data secure area, you could even do a little tweet and Facebook status update saying Ladha is dead. But actually we laugh and we jest, but there will come a point where that will need to be managed, otherwise we will have online personalities which are no longer relevant because they're no longer around, so they become historical. So that's not part of Facebook, that's part of Facebook historical. They've just created a new brand. So basically, these are the things that we need to consider as retailers, which is they are tweeting, they are on Facebook, they are on Google+, they will jump onto the latest fad like Pinterest. And actually, how do you integrate that, not just in your online model, but in your offline model too? And how do you actually, people talk about attribution, so they want to attribute at what channel a journey began and where it ends. And I just think, well, what's the point? Because the reality is all you can do is close the sale, and the only way you can close the sale is an amazing brand experience with lots of experiences by channel which are relevant. And interestingly, final tale is that, well, so two final tales. One which is last Wednesday, which was the 29th of Feb, we ran a one-off promotion. In fact, one in 4 years. So goodness knows what happens when you get to your like for like. But basically, we ran a one-off promotion, and we had our biggest day ever online. In fact, it was 3 times bigger than our last biggest day. And with a conversion rate of 9.1% for, actually 9.2%. So for a multi-channel retailer, that is industry leading, because I know in pure play retailers, 10% tends to be the norm. And I guess the question is, how do you do that? And that is about, and one of the things that we've done across all of the brands at Aurora, is to actually make sure that your business is aligned to getting your product to the customer, no matter where it is. So our omni-channel strategy has been very much around, if it's in our online store, it will be shipped from our online store, and if it's actually not available there, then no matter where it is in the country, we will find it and get it to you. And we've taken that through a lovely customer journey in terms of a nice postcard inside saying this was wrapped by Hash in Brighton store. So actually they get a personal connection with the experience end to end. So there's a lot of that can be done in terms of maximising inventories. There's a lot that can be done in terms of maximising customer experiences by channel. But the biggest thing is understanding the consumer and who you're targeting, and actually realising that technology is not for the 17-year-old, but actually it's for everyone who is using it in whichever way is appropriate to them. So insight into the future as to what will happen with the next generation. I have 2 nephews, one is 9 and one is 6. The 9-year-old for his 9th birthday had an iPad, which I bought him, I spoiled him. And basically, when the 6-year-old's birthday came up, I went to my sister's, he ran to the door and he went, have you bought me an iPad for my birthday? To which I replied, no, your mum said you can only have them when you're 9. His response was, what's the point? iPads won't exist when I'm 9.
Ash, Thank you, and thank you particularly for muddled generation, which explains a lot in my life. So, Simon, love to hear from you and the John Lewis perspective.
Yeah, sure. I always hate going after Hatch because he's a very entertaining speaker and he always says lots of things that I agree with. So kind of how can you kind of add to that? But I think it's a department store, and we've got a kind of unique perspective because our online sales is actually quite a mature part of our business. So when our results are announced tomorrow, our online sales will be kind of around maybe even a fraction over 20% of our overall business. So it's quite an important part of our kind of business moving ahead. And the customer journeys, when we've kind of looked going back a few years, have changed dramatically for us in the department store sector. So when I was a youngster, you went to the high street, you went to the shop and you bought what they had in stock. And today, of course, the customer journey is so different than that. So more than 60% of our customers say that they now research online before they come in and buy in a shop. Or 30% of people who research in a shop say that they go and buy online. 40% of people have a smartphone and use that as part of their shopping mission. And of course, as Hash said, this omni-channel that people talk about now is that we've moved on from the days that people said, well, I just research online and then I go and transact in a shop. People are researching online and in the shop and over the telephone and in a catalogue, and they're jumping up and down like this the whole way through. So that brings challenges for a retailer because actually your whole shopping mission needs to be joined up. And that brings challenges from an organisational structure point of view. And as a business, probably like many retailers, we've been through that journey. We had what we called John Lewis Direct. They didn't sit in the same building as the rest of John Lewis. They were in Chelsea, in a nice building over there. They had a completely different business dress. They used to get drunk on a Friday night. They did all sorts of things that wouldn't be thought of in John Lewis. And gradually, through time, the whole culture was different, but actually there were not economies of scale. It was kind of slightly off-brand, and we kind of moved the whole thing together. So that involved quite a change there. The rest of our store portfolio went through the change to see this rising beast called John Lewis Direct, johnlewis.com, that was taking their sales. So the salesman in Bluewater on a Saturday afternoon spent an hour selling a television for the customer to say, I'll just go and buy it online when they go home. Just think of how they felt when retailers actually thrive on sales that they see every single day. So one of the most significant changes we made was to allocate all of our online sales to a shop. So that's either to the shop that is their home branch where they do most of their shopping, or their local kind of shop thereafter. So that kind of changed the culture there. Many of the propositions we've had to look at, propositions we offer to kind of align that as much as possible. So Never Knowingly is undersold, that many of you will have heard of and hopefully taken advantage of over the years, that based in our shops. We didn't used to offer that online, but that was really odd that you had a different price potentially in shops that you had online on some occasions. So we very much moved to have multi-channel pricing to bring that together. Some of our delivery propositions to align that and the things that we offered. So lots around that, and lots around our staff in terms of how do you train them? How do you train them actually to kind of cope with this new world that we live in? So actually the recruitment process now to come and work in John Lewis, frankly, if you do not shop online and you don't know how to surf the web, actually that's the kind of literacy these days for coming into retailing. So we're having to work hard to train our existing staff. We're putting sort of additional PCs and laptop and free Wi-Fi for staff so that we're encouraging them to get into this kind of modern multi-channel, omni-channel age, so they feel as comfortable as the customers that they're kind of selling that come into the shop. And the kind of look and feel of the website, the kind of final area, because actually recognising that most customers now will start their customer journey online is actually, does it have the same look and feel, is it the same handwriting, the same refund policy the whole kind of way through into the shops. So that's kind of quite important. But what's the prize really for us? Well, a real opportunity and a real challenge. The opportunity is if you can persuade people who just shop in shops, that's the bulk of customers for most retailers, to shop online as well. Most retailers will say that they spend disproportionately more. So our people who shop in both channels will shop 3.5 times. They'll spend 3.5 times as much. They shop more frequently, they shop more categories. So that's a massive prize if you can get people to kind of shop in different channels. They're more loyal to the brand, and they're more likely to shop with you in years in the future. So the big kind of prize there. The challenge, of course, is that if you were just to take your offline customers and simply move them to shop online, you're stuck with these really kind of expensive fixed assets on the high street. So the idea is not to kind of intentionally migrate them over, it's to give them a real hassle-free or inspirational experience that they spend more with you. There's some interesting PricewaterhouseCoopers research recently that they claim that most offline customers historically that maybe chose their non-food items they buy from a basket of maybe 10 different retailers, that when they find and learn about multi-channel, they consolidate their spending to their 3 to 5 favourite retailers. And that would support some of the findings we've got that people spend disproportionately more with you. So there's a big challenge there in understanding the kind of profitability as people start to kind of change their shopping habits. And then in terms of the future, I think it is an exciting time. Things are going to change very, very quickly. Technology will play an increasing role, and I agree with Ash, that's not necessarily online, that's in shops. So how can you introduce technology that is relevant, that adds something to the experience, either makes it more inspirational, hassle-free for the shopper, and actually frankly for the retailer as well. There are things that we can do that make it more efficient for us, and that kind of offsets some of the changing shopping habits. So technology will play a kind of key role ahead for us.
Simon, thank you, and thank you to all our panel for their thoughts. I'd like to open it up to the floor now to any questions we may have. Do we have any mics available? No. Okay, you're going to have to talk loudly. Sorry, Claire.
That isn't usually a problem. I've just got an observation. I work for eBay, so I guess we're really interested in kind of how a lot of these trends are coming together, particularly mobile and local. And one of the observations I have is that for the on and offline world, a lot of the things that are going to make shopping better are actually about giving over your personal information. You know, whether that's where you are, or in the case of a loyalty program, you know, everything you're buying in store. But I guess there's also a kind of counter trend to that, which is, you know, privacy concerns and so on. And I just wondered how much the panel felt that kind of direction of travel towards kind of handing over that information was sort of unstoppable, or whether that, you know, there potentially is a reaction to that on the cards.
Simon, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, I think there is a fine line, and there's lots of noise in the US over this, where perhaps some retailers are crossing that line. But I think for us, we're quite safe, really, to be honest. And actually, we would very much respect the relationship we've got with our customers. And if anything, if we toy in actually in terms of our marketing activity, in terms of actually bombarding people too much, we will always err on the cautious side. That said, particularly in the online world, there's some amazing data that you can get that you can actually sort of monetize and make it very, very lucrative. And I think the challenge that most retailers are coming with, how can you do the same in the offline world? How can you be upfront with customers and say, look, this is what I'm going to do with your information, are you happy with that? And where people opt in, that you do that. I think for us, that would only ever be within JLP and with the customer's consent that they realise what we're doing. But to sell the data on to a third party or something else would be definitely way off brand for us. But I think, you know, there's lots more to do, but I would say, you know, we will just kind of tread carefully. If you lose that trust with customers that you think you're abusing the information that you have, then that's a dangerous place to be.
Ash, anything to add?
I think in addition to the trust piece is that customers are really happy to hand their data to you if they're getting something back which is meaningful. And I think particularly with the younger generation, they're quite free and easy with their data as long as they trust you, and also they know that you're going to have you're going to do something meaningful for them for it. And we collect data in stores as well as online and through a CRM program. And when we launched that last year, there was a huge hesitation as to whether customers would give the data over in store in terms of an email address to be able to link your transaction with. Because actually our store teams were able to sell it to them on a basis of they would be getting, you know, whether it's offers or trend updates, etc. The customers were really relaxed about it, and where they say no, you know, as long as you're not forcing them to, so then it shouldn't really matter. But I think data is becoming less of an issue. Again, I think there is a generation divide there, so generally a 35 plus person will find it a bit more scary. But there is a lot of rich data which can be done, and I think a lot of the data fuss is actually caused by the legislators. So the cookie laws which are coming in this year, I didn't remember any single customer uprising saying, we don't want people to drop cookies, but it's come from the European Parliament, and as a result, we're imposing something which the customer hasn't really asked for.
Thank you. Any other questions? Stephen.
Thank you very much for the great presentation. It's really interesting stuff. It strikes me in all my years in retail that it's as much about emotion and intuition as it is about data. And when I was a boy on a Friday, the directors would go out to store, look around the stores, and they'd see availability, they'd have clues about customer interaction, how long the queues were at the checkout, you get a feel about the pricing, trolleys left in the car park, that kind of stuff. I wonder if we've made that transition as senior management into the online world. Do we go online and look at the broken navigation, look at the poor availability per page, how difficult it is to check out, and that last mile when we get the product? Are we as cute at saying, do we order stuff? Does our family order stuff that from us and our competitors? Because of course we don't just shop our own stores on our Friday trips out to stores, we go around the competitors very easily. And I wonder if senior management has made that transition as effectively as they might.
Gwyn, do you want to offer a perspective on that?
Okay, I thought it was more of an online, but very happy to. So I didn't get where you're from.
A company called BRC, you'll remember.
I am indeed. I just read your badge from here. Well, then you will know, of course, as a British Retail Consortium,
Or you
that
have
is
food on your
something.
board, of course.
It is something that we do spend a lot of time on. I mean, I think customer connectivity around every touch point is essential, and it would be playing fast and loose with customer confidence if you didn't think that you needed to be as clear about how you deliver your goods. And the guys have commented on it very effectively, and the lengths that they go to online, and certainly for our online business, whether that's our direct online business or click and collect, we go through all of those same processes. So I'm still in a store on a Friday looking at queues and talking to customers, but I'll equally do customer listening groups with our online customers. We have customer panels, so online customer panels. So we have lots and lots of listening mechanisms throughout the business. I don't think you can afford to be siloed in any aspect of multi-channel business.
Simon, anything to add?
Yeah, I think you do a lot more. It's kind of challenging because I think I've worked on both sides, so I kind of see it on both sides. And in my opinion, quite often you go to one shop and you see a few trolleys in the car park, you can jump to big conclusion. In the online world, it is very data rich, and I can tell you, I sit down with my boss once a month and we go through no end of stuff that in an offline world you just cannot do. And I think you learn a lot more based on some hard facts, and you can test things out there. So I think I would say there's even more focus, but it will depend on the region, depend on the engagement of the board, whether and the importance of online to that business. But potentially, I think it puts you in a much stronger position. In actual fact, I think it puts the focus back on offline, and actually we're kind of relatively weak there.
Thank you. Any other questions?
My question relates to the concept of omni-channel and how you maintain a healthy relationship with an individual customer as the number of channels increases constantly. How do you do that, and how do you manage the noise?
Ash, do you want to kick us off?
I think actually answering both in part is that essentially I do agree with you. I think there is a lot to be learnt between the channels where you can really bring it together. But actually, if you break it all back down to its bare minimum, we're just shopkeepers. And whether you've got a website and a shop, or both, or either, then actually you still have to, keep the shop. And that is not being sloppy around customer journeys and paths. And certainly at Oasis, we do it across all the channels with the very, very same discipline, which is how will the customer feel about this, and actually what is the journey that they're going through. We don't always get it right, because actually the complexity of a business and the increasing amount of channels makes it harder. But you just have to run twice as fast and work twice as hard. And unfortunately, there are occasions where you will let people down. I guess the issue around that is how you recover that. So really interestingly, I mean, quite often I get their fun poked around me around the 90-minute service, particularly from my previous boss at ASOS. It's only because they can't do it because they haven't any shops. But the reality on that is that actually our net promoter score on the 90-minute delivery service is 9, and we don't always get it there. Sometimes it's just slightly out of that SLA. It's how we pick that up and actually make sure that the negative is turned into the positive. And like I say, you don't always get it right. And I think social media makes it much harder because it's a very public forum, so you need to be very responsible around that. So it makes it all very complex. But all you can do, and I think certainly learning from your points, is if you are structured in silos, it makes it harder still. And as a management team, we work across all of the channels together with our accountabilities and responsibilities. So it is a different way of running an organisation.
Thank you. Any others?
Yep. If we look particularly at the grocery retailers, I think one of the key successes would be the loyalty programs that they've launched and the data from them. What do you see as kind of the key opportunities now that we have the digital world for both recognising and rewarding customer loyalty?
Gwyn, if you want to answer.
Well, I think if we look at Sainsbury's specifically, then it would be the sort of programmes we run, such as Coupon at Till, and indeed, for example, your Nectar Points. So, in a very tangible way, we connect the information that customers share with us with the reward that we give them, whether that is reward in terms of loyalty points that translates into hard cash, or whether it is connecting with them in a way that shows that we understand where they are in their life journey and therefore what's relevant to them in terms of offers and things. I mean, it also does affect, how we actually merchandise stores, where we put products, what we put on promotion, what we promote together, all of those sorts of things to make the overall shopping experience better is data led. I think there's always this hot debate around, do you buy loyalty with a loyalty card? We don't think you do buy loyalty with a loyalty card. I think we should be very clear about this. I think a loyalty card is part of the mix of loyalty. If you don't have great products and you don't have fantastic service and you don't have convenient stores and you don't have great prices, no amount of pieces of plastic and loyalty points are going to win your customer loyalty. So I think it is about us being respectful of the information we can get and make sure that we use it in a way that is a tangible benefit to our customers. I think it's a well-trodden space, it's a busy space, and I think customers are very savvy. People aren't stupid, and you think they are a danger, and people generally, I think the point's been well made. People don't mind sharing data and information with you if there's something in it for them, and I think we've got to be very clear as retailers as that's our responsibility.
Thank you. Anything anybody else wants to add? Okay. Next door.
Hello. Okay, sorry. Hello, Caroline Thompson, qualitative research in retail. I was very interested in just as a comment really, and perhaps a question, I was very interested in Simon's observation about the impact that new technology is having on the way you deliver customer service. I've had experience of the computer coming out at the desk and what a difference that has made. I think with what Tesco has recognised in the retail world, supermarket retail world, is that customer service is much more important than they have perhaps delivered on in the past. I know it's an issue of concern, or always something that Sainsbury's wants to deliver well on. Technology is allowing us to blur the lines between on and offline retail. What are we doing in the offline, i.e. the supermarkets, to change the way we serve the customer and to deliver higher standards or different standards of customer service in the future? So I think it's going to be a big challenge. Is that too difficult a question?
No, I don't think it is. I thought it was coming that way. I thought we were off down a technology advantage of technology. So the question,
The question is what has happened? It's an observation really. It's all too easy with the changes in technology to lose sight of the traditional importance of customer service, because that's such an important touch point with the customer.
Yeah.
And how are we going to deliver increasingly better customer service in the future?
Yeah, I think it's. I'd refer back, I guess, to the history of Sainsbury's prior to the turnaround, where I guess sort of 8-10 years ago, Sainsbury's embarked on a very high-tech journey, which was very high-tech, very low touch, that basically led to the downward spiralling of the business that led to it, almost being out of business. And because it had lost sight of some universal truths around service, so going to fully automated warehousing, all run by computers with hardly a person inside, meant there was no product on the shelf. And there is a danger, I think, that if you're not very careful, you can lose sight of the basic principles of great service. And you make an interesting observation about the ever-increasing, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it's this sense that increasing expectations of service.
I think there is an increasing expectation of the in-store experience, and the manifestation of that is the customer service.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think you're right, and I think to an extent, the reason why there'll always be a day job in bricks and mortar retail around service is that I think customers have a perfect right to expect a great level of service if they've taken their time and trouble. Andrea talked before about fuel, cost of fuel, the hassle of getting to the supermarket. People find it in many ways a necessary evil, and therefore think it is beholden on the supermarket or whoever it is, whatever kind of retailer, to provide a great service experience. It is a holy grail. I don't think there is a golden bullet. So, if there was, I'd be firing it. I don't think there is an answer that says if we do X, we'll satisfy our customers. I think what you have to do, and all of our learning in this space, is you have to provide a good level of consistently good service. So it isn't. Of course, there are wows, and many books have been written about the wows in service. But it is about having clean, well-lit stores with great availability and polite colleagues that are willing to serve. It's about ease of shop. It's about getting better every day. It's about those real basics that connect around the service profit chain to underpin a business. So I think, what are we doing about it? We are doing some very tangible things, such as scan and go. Hesh made the point really well around people don't want to queue at checkouts, and you feel really smug chasing through. You're exactly right. A very significant percentage of our customers choose to scan and go. They don't want to queue at a checkout. So there are some very tangible things, but unfortunately there is a load of painting the Forth Road Bridge things. There's a load of having colleagues who are well informed about the jobs that they're trying to do, so that they can pass on great information to customers in real time and make those customers feel special, that will take the time to take customers to product, that will help them if they need help at the front end and in the car parks, and there's just no substitute for all that good workaday stuff. So I don't sense in Sainsbury's that we have ever stepped away from that as an ethos. I know there's a lot of talk at the moment about others that have maybe done so and are now choosing, to get heavily back into that space. But as I said in my opening remarks, I think if you play fast and loose with the customer, you'll lose them on the journey. So I wish there was an easy catch-all for service. There isn't. You've got to grind it exceedingly fine.
Andrea, you have a bit of a bird's eye perspective on what other retailers may be doing to kind of address the in-store experience.
Yeah, I think the point, I think almost the flip side of Stephen's question, which I think Lady's touched on, is if we focus online, are we going to forget about stores? And I think, obviously we saw Tesco's announcement on Monday that they were going to recruit 20,000 staff to put back into stores, and I think there has been an element, the recession, the downturn's gone on probably longer than anybody was expecting. In the early days, there was probably low-hanging fruit you could cut. Now we're getting to the point where it is, one retailer said to me, you have to do so much just to stand still, and I think there is a danger that if we, people do keep focusing on cost cutting, productivity, there is a danger that customer service does get lost, and that's what Tesco have basically been admitting, that we put productivity over people, and that's, you know, one of the reasons why we didn't do so well at Christmas, and why we're having to totally revamp our business and go back to basics. And in the grocers there's a bit of a more of an emphasis on fresh food at the moment, and it's not just, I mean, it's sort of having, you know, fresh apples and things like that, but it's also sort of counter service and things like that. That seems to be hotting up as another big battleground with price, and I think service and experience and walking in and seeing if the apples are ripe or the bananas bruised is a sort of a proxy for, am I getting good service, am I being looked after?
Okay, right at the back, we've probably got time for a couple more questions. It's getting very warm in here.
Zach Wilcox from Think Tank Center for Cities. You've talked about customer service, and you've talked about the merging of online with brick and mortar. How is that changing the skills that you require in your employees? And in turn, how is that changing how you're training your employees, or the skills that you expect from new employees coming in?
Simon, you touched on that. Do you want to pick up on
Yeah, so I think there's two sides to this. So one is that the recruitment of new staff. We have changed the bar. The bar has moved in terms of what you need to recruit new people in. And we have invested quite heavily in training programs. So staff are trained, so they have a different set of skills, an improved set of skills moving ahead. I think the other key thing is that actually the reality is most customers are coming in now much better informed about what they want to buy than they've ever done before. Because actually most people have got their own technology, they've done their homework beforehand. So one of the big challenges for retailers is that the member of staff who's part-time, who turns up at 5 minutes before their shift and walks in, and the customer comes in who's done 5 hours of research on whatever they're going to buy, bombs out and asks a really detailed question. So how do you train I think the real question is, how do you get your member of staff so they can feel comfortable to be able to answer those really specific questions? So it's about the technology you give the staff and the tools that you give the staff, and what training you can help them to anticipate these are the kind of questions that you'll be asked. I think wanted to take that to the next level. What we're doing is involving our staff in ratings and reviews. So we have what we call partner reviews. So they go out and actually sort of assess product. So they really are sort of deemed to be kind of experts in their kind of particular field. But I think it's a real challenge going ahead is that how do you maintain this as this trend will only continue in the future?
Yeah, I think I'm totally there. I think in terms of anything that involves technology, and I think it is an ever, you know, you're running very fast to keep a pace with the customer actually, because they do come, you know, they're looking at that one specific thing and they'll have done all the research before they hit the shop, and to ask a colleague to have that sort of level of knowledge I think is very challenging. On the fresh food, Andrea touched on the point around fresh food, and it's something that, you know, I think we've you know, got out of our way really to lead the field on, and very specifically on training colleagues there. We took the decision about 18 months ago now to open a series of fresh food colleges, and we opened 6 colleges, which gives all of our colleagues the ability to access the college within a 2-hour drive from home. And we're putting roughly 20,000 colleagues a year through great food training, which gives them great skills, particularly counter skills, which is fishmongery, butchery, experience on the delis, pizzas, barista training, aligned with leadership and customer service training, and importantly, that is all now accredited by city and guilds. And I think one of the most important things we can do in the two-way relationship with colleagues in relation to training is making sure that there's something in it for them and something in it for us. And qualifications, I think, that we can really work you know, in partnership with accreditation bodies to give qualifications to colleagues, I think is hugely motivating in this space of helping them to want to serve customers better in this ever-increasing sort of customer space. And food colleges have gone down just incredibly well, and we find there's a genuine waiting list and great feedback. And I think, you know, we have this expression, you know, every worker a knowledge worker. There's nothing gives you the confidence when you're facing into a customer in any set of circumstances than knowing your facts, so you know where you're coming from, and you can engage in a good conversation. And I think that's what we're endeavouring to do in terms of training.
I would say just one thing, slightly controversially, is that I actually think that in retail, in the store teams, there is far more ability to accept technology than certainly a centre or a head office gives credit for, because there's a lot of young people working there. Unfortunately, they leave the technology at the door and they start to work in the old-fashioned mindset in which the organisation is run. So actually giving Wi-Fi and all the tools isn't really a, well, hey moment. It's actually, for them, it's like, I can't believe you haven't already done it. But the people at head office are like, oh God, we've done an amazing thing, we're going to be Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is a basic human right. So, it's not something we should necessarily celebrate as an initiative. Actually, you're just catching up. So I think there's already a lot of that sort of skill set in our stores, depending on brand, etc. The second point to say is that actually it does change the shape of teams at your head office structure, because actually you need some people who are very intuitive, who have flair, who have creativity, but actually the online world brings a lot of stuff in terms of analytics. And what I think the job of a management team is to actually embrace all of those, bring them all together, and to be able to make that into a coherent business structure, which actually means that there is creative tension between people, because there's a creative person saying, I want this to be pink, and actually A/B testers are going, but pink doesn't work. Well, do you know what? We'll do it yellow. It doesn't really matter, unless it's your logo, of course. But, so there are lots of those debates which need to happen in retail, and actually I think retail's got intelligent, and that's what makes it a lot more fun. And I'm sure Liz won't mind me saying, as our MD, is as an exec team, we've now started tweeting each other. So, and the reason we're doing it is because we want to lead by example, which is we try not to, unless it's a private thing or sales update, we text. But if we want to just say, have you seen, then we'll do a tweet, because actually that's showing our teams that we are embracing the modern world. Some of us have got fewer followers than others, and we're a competitive bunch, so we compare our follower numbers every morning, and we spend quite a long time talking about that too.
Okay, any final burning questions people have? Can we just end with this gentleman here?
Yeah, Carl Allen. I'm not from any organization, but I do have an observation. Whenever you're in a store, supermarket, whatever, and you're talking about big retail chains, and you ask a difficult question in the sense of it requires a bit of detailed knowledge, it seems that no one can answer it. And in this knowledge economy, I wonder, why is that? Why couldn't someone in the store simply cascade up the question to Jeeves, and you get the answer online, real time, facing a person? Jeeves is a real person, facing Jeeves on a screen.
I think it's a really interesting point. I don't know if any of you have been to a GP recently, but that's exactly how they run their practice. So I've got a headache. They go, what happens if someone's got a headache?
We use it heavily in our call centre. We have a wiki with every single question, so the shops have access to that. So we've built up all of those kind of questions and do exactly as you say.
Okay, I think we're going to draw a close there. We've run on. I'd like to encourage you to stay with us in the bar to have further drinks and nibbles and continue the discussion. I'd like to thank you all for coming, but most importantly, a huge thanks to our panel for such an interesting discussion. Thank you.